Welcome to the Growth Plus Exit podcast, where owners of privately held middle market companies talk about founding, scaling, and exiting their businesses successfully. Learn how to maximize and monetize your business on your own terms. Let's get started.
Hello, I'm Heather Bennett, your host for the Growth Plus Exit podcast, featuring business owners talking about founding, scaling, and exiting their businesses. Past guests on the Growth Plus Exit podcast include Allison Cummins, CEO of Blue Outcomes, Stephen Brent May and Hami Arrington, founders of 1 Foot Over, and Jody Jankowski, CEO of Blackline. This episode is brought to you by Newport LLC, a team of seasoned C-suite executives who help CEOs of privately held companies grow, de-risk, and exit their businesses successfully. To learn more about Newport, visit us at newportllc.com or find us on LinkedIn. Before introducing today's guest, I would like to thank Kim Denny, who introduced me to Gabriel Arguello of Rent to Own Trailers, for introducing me to Brookelyn. Gabriel had the most incredible things to say about Brookelyn, so I was absolutely excited when I was able to connect with her and get her to come on the show. So today's guest is Brookelyn Avila. Brookelyn is the owner of Van Sharks. Van Sharks is a family-owned business recognized by the Houston Chronicle as the best of the best in auto body shop and repair. Van Sharks is focused on being the premier destination for custom and luxury van solutions. They specialize in building luxury, functional, and customized vehicles for both personal use, such as tiny homes and travel vans, and for businesses such as mobile clinics and mobile spas, I'm certain they will create many, many more. Brookelyn is a serial entrepreneur with a string of successful ventures to her name, showcasing her innovative spirit and business acumen as she works with her clients to make their dreams reality. She has also been featured on the Behind Her Business podcast, hosted by Christina Johnson, which is a great episode, so I would highly recommend watching that podcast as well. Brookelyn, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
So let's get right to it. How did you get started in this business?
So it's interesting. My background has absolutely nothing to do with the automotive industry, especially vans. And so I found myself at the end of 2022, I had a business partner who had a very large family who was approached by someone that owned a van conversion company, much like Van Sharks, and said, hey, I didn't do very well during COVID. I really struggled to recover. I'm going bankrupt and I'd like to start a new company, but need kind of an angel investor. Would you and your group be interested in doing that? And so when he brought it to me, I said, and they knew each other because he had reached out to him to build a van for him several years prior. And the gentleman had let him know it was going to take about 6 to 9 months, which is way too long. And so that partner ended up purchasing a van from a larger company called Explorer, and they are in the northern United States. But he brought it to me and I said, I don't know much about the automotive industry, but I did a little bit of market research and reviewed some numbers with our CPA and said, there doesn't seem to be a lot of competition for this, in at least here in Texas. And so I said, I have a healthy appetite for risk. Let's do it. So what happened was we found out later, and so this is a part of the story that people should definitely listen to. But we found out later that gentleman who had all of the know-how of this industry was in very hot water with the Texas State Comptroller. And for listeners that are not from Texas, you may not know this, but Texas State Comptroller is just an entity that you do not want to be in trouble with. It is the only entity, at least here in the state of Texas, right, that can pierce the corporate veil. And they are ugly about that. And so there is something called successor liability, and it's essentially a law that is there to prevent someone from closing down one business and opening a new one. It does not absolve you of your tax responsibility. And so what that meant was that we were going to be liable for his $2.5 million tax bill. And so very, very quickly, that gentleman became radioactive. And so at that point, we had already signed a pretty extensive lease. We had purchased equipment, hired a team, began advertising. And we said, we've spent all this money. We've got really two options. We can roll up our sleeves and dig out the old-fashioned way, or we can cut our losses. And so we obviously decided to roll up our sleeves and dig out the old-fashioned way. And I found myself falling in love with vans. And following a difficult year personally in 2023, I said, at the beginning of 24, I said, you know what? I have had a lot of pretty abrupt life changes, and I think that I would really like to be focused. I've done a lot of different things, and I think I'd really like to focus on something that I'm truly passionate about, and I love Van Sharks. So I offered to buy out my partner at the time, which he was gracious enough to accept, and I took over 100%. And that is the story about how a girl that knew nothing about cars or vans became the owner of a van conversion company.
So, like that, very brave to go into an area, an industry. What do you think from your prior career, your prior jobs that you took into this experience allowed you to be comfortable with that risk?
The biggest thing because I've done, like I mentioned, several different things. The biggest thing that I've noticed in working in different industries is that the fundamentals of every business truly are the same, right? And so if you can figure out revenue generation, how do I get clients through the door? Then how do I, deliver this product that I'm selling? That's the same really everywhere that you go. And so fortunately, I do have a background in advertising and marketing. And so I knew that as long as I connected myself with the right people to manage that advertising and marketing, I could get the phone to ring. And so that was the most important thing to me when I took over. And so we did that with the help of KJ Marketing. They are our advertising agency. And it did take us a while. It took us a little bit of time to get that right, just like it does for anybody. And my piece of advice would be to work with a company that treats your advertising dollars like their own, because you can tell very, very quickly when you're working with a very big agency that you're just a number to them. And so as a startup, you want to align yourself with people that are, because every single dollar, or especially getting, it hurts a little bit, right? And you want to see those dollars come back to you as quickly as possible. Otherwise, you're not going to stay alive. So linking up with that agency, and we interviewed a lot of them, but that was definitely the most important thing that I did at the beginning. And then just, the ability to enter a situation or a room and understand inefficiencies, right? So the way that we built vans when we first started is very different than the way that we build them now. And so often, I hear people say it all the time, you can't see the forest for the trees. There's nothing that happens at Van Sharks at this point that I don't know how to do. So rolling your sleeves up and getting down into the trenches with your team not only builds a great team, but it also empowers you as a business owner so that other people, nobody can hold that things that you don't know against you, right? And I don't think that at this point that, once you get to a certain size, of course, there's going to be certain things that maybe you don't know how to do, but when you're in the midst of a startup, there really shouldn't be anything that you don't know about that business, because in order to get a good pulse on it, you've got to know everything that's going on.
Okay, so moving from 2023 to now, what are some of the major turning points during the last 2 years for the company?
So the biggest turning point for us is we became a certified expert upfitter by Mercedes-Benz. And so what that meant for us is, well, number one, there's only one other certified expert upfitter in the entire state of Texas, and they've been in business since 1975. They do great work. They're called Sports Mobile, and they're in Austin. Their primary focus is camper vans. But to have the backing from Mercedes-Benz as such a young company has given us a lot of credibility with our clients. What it has also given us the opportunity to do is finance through Mercedes-Benz Financial, because we have traditionally been a cash-based business. And so what we saw happen is, all of a sudden, people that maybe didn't have $75,000 to pay us in cash for their upfit, now they can actually finance the vehicle as a whole through Mercedes. And so it opened our market up to be able to service more clients. So that's definitely been the biggest turning point.
What an excellent partnership. That it really can make a huge difference. And I think that talks, both of the examples you've given in partnership, both with Mercedes-Benz and your original partner, have taught you lessons on when you should partner with someone or an organization and when you should not. So that's really good examples.
I appreciate that. I do have another example of that. So at the end of 24, I got connected with Gabriel. And one of the biggest, it was an exciting thing, but it became an issue very fast last year. We grew 57% in top line revenue, and we were not ready for it. You gave an example when we were chatting earlier about, your friend who had someone pick their business up. They had Whole Foods pick up their business, and scaling an operation is very, very different than, starting, right? And so I had, at the end of 24, a few investors take notice of what we were doing and become interested in partnering. And the only thing that they really had to offer was, money, which is great to have. But here's the thing, if you throw money at something and you still are not firing, that business is not firing on all cylinders, you can throw money at it all day long, and it's never going to, if the health isn't there, it's never going to give back to you or give back to that investor. So Gabriel and I became connected, and I was very interested in an equity partnership with him because of what he has done at Rent to Own Trailers. So not only has he built this incredible finance company, but he also supplies the trailers, right, that they are leasing to their clients. And they've managed to scale, tremendously over the last few years. And what he does production-wise is something very similar to what I do. And so that partnership made a lot of sense to me, because it wasn't really about the money, it was about the ability to scale something. And I had heard a saying a long time ago, I'd rather have 10% of a watermelon than 100% of a grape, right? And so Gabriel and I became partners at the end of the year. So that's why I'm very honored that he, introduced me to you and said nice things about me, because we work together on a regular basis.
That's excellent. So, and you talked about the financial help. What do you think are the key things to do to make sure a startup is financially healthy, or even a business that's been around for a bit? What do you think are those key flags or areas to pay attention to keep a company financially healthy?
I think, keeping your fixed expenses as low as possible is very important. Paying attention to, for what we do, we have a lot of cost of goods sold, right? And so there are certain figures that we had to learn, setting up vendor accounts so that we could, get things at wholesale pricing, keeping those fixed expenses down, and really the way that we started, our first warehouse was 25,000 square feet, and the rent was $25,000 a month. And that's not the way that you should start. It's in a situation like that, you're really learning kind of with a gun to your head. I mean, I had a little over $1 million a year just in expenses, right? My break even was $1 million, right, for 2024. And I don't recommend that people start big like that. If you start small, you can make mistakes that are not so on a smaller scale, right? And it affords you the opportunity to learn something without it costing so much. And so I think that's something that is very important to pay attention to when you're just starting out.
It's such great advice. And
Also,
I've
cash
seen.
is. Oh,
Go
I'm
ahead.
so sorry, Heather. I was going to say cash is key. Cash is key. So hang on to as much cash as you can, right?
Absolutely. And I think you hit on one of the most important things for entrepreneurs to know is sometimes you don't quit your day job. And that
Oh yeah,
starting small as a side hustle is not a bad idea.
that's right.
Definitely. So what is your vision for the company? What impact are you hoping to have? What does the future look like?
So my vision for the company is to have, it's interesting. This partnership with Mercedes is something that I'm very excited about, because ideally one day I would like to be acquired by Mercedes. And you can tell me, Heather, I'm going to lean on your wisdom there if you think that that's something we should leave in the podcast. But it is something that I hope for, through the way that we work so closely with them, because Mercedes, they have a harder time selling vans because a lot of the vans that they sell are empty, and the general public does not have really a vision for what a final product could be. And so in the beginning of next year, so Q1 of 26, you will be able to find the first Van Sharks van inside of a Houston Mercedes-Benz dealership. And they're very excited about doing that with us because their van sales are a bit low. And so they want to have a finished product that's sitting on the showroom floor so that they can demonstrate to clients, this is what you're going to get.
Absolutely. And you think about in terms of the fact that a staged home sells better than an empty home. It's very similar. You have to help people see the vision. And long term, I think it's good to consider all the options. And
Right.
it's something that I've worked with for business owners is even if you think you're never going to exit the business, you always have to think about what that could look like and what the opportunity looks like. So having a long-term perspective
Yes, I
on
could
what
not
that
agree
could look
more.
like, yeah, is so important. Hello, and we're back, and you can see that Brooklyn is now in her office. And this definitely tells you the story of what business owners are like and what they need to be in order to be successful. It is rolling up your sleeves, it's getting in there, and sometimes you have to drive a Sprinter van somewhere.
That's
And
right.
that's okay.
That's okay.
That is
That's
okay.
okay.
So, Brooklyn, on that subject, what is the most unusual thing or interesting or unexpected thing you've had to do as a business owner?
Well, gosh, I've had to do a lot of unusual things as a business owner, but if we're talking about project based, we had put a coffee shop. I don't know if you know what a Honda Acti is, but it's a van. Are you familiar with those? Okay, so it's like the size of a roller skate. I mean, I could fit one in my office here. It's super, super tiny. And so we had a client when we were pretty early on. I think we were maybe a year in. I mean, we're still early on, right? But this feels like a lifetime ago. Reach out to us who said, hey, it's my dream to have this mobile coffee cart, but I want to put it in a Honda Acti. And I did a little bit of research and I said, okay, well, this is an aggressively difficult project, right? He had reached out to so many people across the US and he just didn't have anybody that wanted to, take this journey with him. I found out later kind of why, seeing as the project was very, very difficult. It required a tremendous amount of engineering, lots of slides. So the whole thing kind of is a transformer. So the ruckus that comes out of the back, the structure that slides out, actually ended up being even a little bit longer than the van itself, which is really crazy. Yes, and so it required us, and then of course it needed to pass inspection as well. So there were lots of, kind of red tape things that we had to make sure were there. And so it was very interesting. So that's definitely the most interesting project, trying to figure out how are we going to get water from a stationary water tank all the way over here? How are we going to then drain the water from the sink, from two sinks, because he had to actually have two sinks. He had to have a 3-basin sink, and then he had to have just a hand wash sink. So how are we going to get that there? How are we going to drain this espresso machine? And you can't just drain into a bucket per the health code. You've got to actually move that gray water, is what we call it, all the way back to this fixed gray water tank. It was pretty aggressive. The project took us 6 months, which is a lot longer than what a typical project takes us. But again, there were a lot of things that we had to do to kind of be creative with putting this thing, bringing this to life. And so that's definitely the strangest project I've ever had.
Absolutely. That is a unique offering. But as I said earlier, I am not surprised. I see there's going to be a lot of need for unique uses for vans in the future, and it sounds like you guys have really learned a lot in terms of how to do that. So tell me about some of your proudest moments.
Gosh, one of my proudest moments, actually, this is a good proud moment, I think, personally and professionally. But my daughter, when she was in kindergarten, her teacher called me and said, "Hey, Sophia talks about van sharks all the time. Tell me more about that." And so I kind of explained to her what it was that we did. And she said, "Well, we have career day coming up, and I'd really love to have you bring a van and come talk about what you do with the kids." And so when I arrived, there's this big old group of kindergartners sitting out waiting for me, and their like little eyes are big as saucers because we brought one of our big cool vans that has lights and all the things. And so they were super impressed. And my daughter was sitting with some of her classmates, and she was she kept kind of elbowing everybody, saying, "That's my mom." And so it was by far the coolest thing that I think I've ever felt as a parent and as a business owner. There's nothing better than seeing your child be excited about what you're doing, because you sacrifice so much too. And so you wonder, is it connecting for them why we're always at the office, sometimes late on school nights, or why is mom tired on the weekends? You wonder if that's connecting for them. And in that moment, even though this was obviously 2 years ago, but it really felt like it did. And I was so proud of that.
That's incredible. And so much about like owning a business does tie into your family, your personal life, and all of that. Yeah. Let's talk about your team. Tell me about your team.
So I have an incredible team. I have to tell you, there are a few key people on our team that we wouldn't be here today without them. And so I have to give accolades to each of them, but I'd love to share with you why each one of them are special. So I'm going to start with Hannah. We don't always tell people this, but Hannah's actually my closest friend. And so we typically keep that under wraps, but she and I owned a catering company together years ago during COVID, of all things. And so we've always worked together in some capacity. And so when we started Van Sharks, she was really interested in being a part of it. But I said, you know what, listen, she worked in corporate sales. She had a great job. She was very good at her job. And I said, we need to make sure this company is going to make it before you completely jump ship, right? And so we had, gone through our first 8 months, and I felt pretty good about it. And so I said, if you're really interested and you want to ride this roller coaster with me, let's do it. And she came on staff, and she really, I hadn't quit my day job at that point. So she was kind of my, eyes and ears, feet on the ground. And she did sales, she did payroll, she was wearing a lot of hats at that time. And, has really become part of our brand, right? The first person that you speak to when you're looking to purchase a van here at Van Sharks is always going to be Hannah. And she has I think when you find people that have the unique ability to learn very quickly and also think on their feet, hang on to them for dear life, because they are far and few between. And she's one of them. And she has just been, obviously our friendship I always tell people she's my platonic soulmate, and it's the truth, but we are very, very close. She's like a sister to me. And so, I trust her tremendously with just everything. And so I always have a lot of peace knowing that I'm working alongside somebody who treats this place like it's her own because of the relationship that we have. The person that I have to highlight after Hannah is Tim Plumley. So Tim has been in the van conversion industry for, almost 15 years. So there's almost nothing the guy hasn't seen. He's super talented. I've never met anybody that has been able to outwork me and Tim until I met Tim. We had a van, and this was a long time ago, but we had a client who, we were running up on a deadline. And Tim and I worked a 23-hour shift together to finish this van. He will just keep going. He just keeps going. And I've really never met anybody with the level of just passion and tenacity that he has for what we do. I think you spend a lot of time with the people that you work with. And so you kind of inherently become friends, and he has shown up for me even on a personal level in so many moments. And so, he is somebody that, I couldn't do Van Sharks without him. He's taught me everything that I know about vans. And so he has been a really key person in the growth of Van Sharks. The other person I'd like to highlight is Robert. Robert is a newer team member. He's only been with us for we're coming almost a year. We're coming up on almost a year, but he came to us from another conversion company in Irving. And it's neat to have a fresh set of eyes and a fresh set of ideas. He's just like Tim. I thought, wow, okay, now I've found two people that can really just continue to keep going, right? He's just like Tim with that tenacity and that passion for what we do, but he actually has a lot of really innovative ideas. So he has helped us create products that are, exclusive to Van Sharks, right? So we've got some really interesting lighting ceilings that we do, Maybach ceilings that we do, that Robert was the one who developed the design for it. These drink rails, so that clients have integrated drink rails. So you have somewhere to put your cup in the van that looks nice, and it's not just a plastic flip out cup holder. He developed the design for those. And so, he has an eye for design also that has brought a unique element to the team. The last person that I'll highlight that we work with on site every day is Jacob. So Jacob is Gabriel's brother, and Jacob manages the production team. So he's the person that comes in every single day, and he makes sure that all the guys have direction for each one of the various projects that we're working on. And he makes sure that we've got inventory for them. Jacob has jumped in, just like anybody else, we experience cash flow gaps. We're still little, right? We're young. We're young, right? And so he has jumped in to say, hey, you know what? Use my credit card. We're going to get it done because the guys need this tomorrow, right? And so he has that partnership has been just outstanding, right? To have people around you that care, right? It's not just, hey, I'm showing up and then I got to get home and I don't think about work when I'm at home. To have people that care about the business the same way that you do is such a blessing. And I don't know what I did to deserve having such great people around me, but I tell you what, I'm not complaining.
It's so crucial. Those first, I would say that first couple of hires when you're growing is so crucial. Both both at a leadership level, because it sounds like all of the ones you mentioned really are leaders within the company, but
Yes.
also at the get the job done level.
Yes.
So definitely, absolutely crucial. Okay, so what are you working on next?
So what I'm working on next, we are a custom conversion specialist. And so I got to tell you, got a lot of love for custom projects, but the real scalability of a business depends on repeatability, right? And so there are only so many things that you can do inside of a Sprinter van because it's just, you're working with the same square footage essentially on each of the three models. But we want to spend more time standardizing. So, we are still going to be a custom conversion specialist. But we are going to start saying no to things like this Honda Acti, for example. So when we're taking, brain power and, to do a Honda Acti or to do something super random that, we know we're probably not going to do again, it doesn't, in the long run, it doesn't really benefit us. And so, what we are working on next is creating more of what we're calling them our spec builds. And it's those spec builds that the first one will be on the showroom at our partner with Sewell Mercedes-Benz here in Houston, Q1 of next year. And then, hopefully from there, we will see those spec builds being sold on other showroom floors here in Texas and then eventually the US.
So, and that's excellent. I think it's really a thoughtful and strategic way to grow a business because when you start out, you do have to try a little bit of everything to see where the market is. That's just testing the market, what is needed, what's going to work, and then learning where the economies of scale are, where the efficiencies are.
Yes.
Which is absolutely vital to growing and scaling. Like you talked, it is really hard to scale. So
Yes.
doing that thoughtfully is so important. So I know we talked about some of the roadblocks for your business. What were some of the obstacles in your personal life during this process? Because it's hard when you're the business owner, like a lot of it just kind of overlaps.
That, it does. I will say I have made a lot of, like everybody does, right? You make a lot of, personal sacrifices, whether that looks like time with family, whether it looks like, maybe not buying that new house, right? Or, whatever it is, right? I will say that at the beginning of this year, well, toward the end of last year, a big roadblock for me, my grandmother had a heart attack, and she's somebody that I'm very, very close to. I know a lot of people are very close to their grandparents, but you can see right here, actually, I have an urn, which always freaks people out. And so this is my mom, who I lost in 2023. So this is her mother. And of course, since losing my mom, that relationship has become even closer. And so she had this heart attack. We really thought we were going to lose her. And I'm very excited to report that she is doing incredibly well. But she did not make it out of the hospital until beginning of February of this year. And she was there for quite a while. And prior to going in, she was fully independent. She owned her home. She was doing things on her own. When she came out, unfortunately, she was not really in a position to be independent. And so there was a lot of commuting. She lives in an area of Houston called Dickinson. And Dickinson is about an hour and 15-minute drive on a good day from where I live in Houston. It's a big city. And so there was a lot of going back and forth trying to commute so that I could be there with her. And then eventually we made the decision to lease her house, and I moved her in with me, which at first was tough. She has regained a lot of her independence, but every single day she came with me to work, right? And so it was, gosh, if I don't want to say this in a way that makes it sound like it was a burden. It's an absolute honor to care for her, but it doesn't take away from the fact that it was it's an added layer to an already kind of, busy and complicated life. And so that was definitely something that kind of, shook my foundation early on this year. I'm happy to report that we've leveled out. She has been, she's doing really, really well. And she, is actually not here today. She was here yesterday just because she wanted to be, but she's not here today because she's able to be home by herself in some moments. And so she's grateful to have that alone time, that's for sure. So
That's so good. Such a good example of how the personal life overlaps
it does.
with work life.
Yes.
And there is an increasing awareness of the support that caregivers need in order to do their job. So it's very real. It's very real. Um, so speaking of people that you look up to, who are your mentors and what's some of the best advice you've gotten from them?
So my mentor that I talk about all the time, her name is Jessica Hatch, and she has turned into one of my closest friends. I was a bridesmaid in her wedding about 5 years ago. But I met Jessica when I was 18 years old, slinging back braces. I used to sell durable medical equipment. And I was so awestruck by her. She was this beautiful, powerful woman who, just commanded respect everywhere that she went. And I met her through a doctor that used to buy bracing from me. And he said, I think that you should meet Jessica. She's really special. And I think she could have a really good influence on not just your life, but your career. I was just with her actually yesterday evening visiting her, but she is the first person. She taught me how to be confident. And that is something that I think it's hard to learn that, right? It's hard to learn how to, be on camera even. I mean, if you had seen me 10 years ago, I couldn't record a social media video. I didn't feel confident about what I was saying. And she believed in me and taught me how to believe in myself. And she taught me also how to have thick skin, because you kind of have to, right? I mean, you get more no's than you do yeses more often, right? And so she is somebody that I've looked up to a lot. She works in the healthcare industry. So she owns MRI facilities and pain management clinics here in Houston. Even though I don't work in that industry anymore, she also has a nonprofit that I sit on the board for. I donated a Sprinter van to that nonprofit last year to help transport childhood cancer patients back and forth from their. I didn't know that the biggest reason that those patients missed their appointments was lack of transportation. And so I had this van, and I said, you know what? I don't need it. This organization needs it a lot more than I do. So we partnered with a company called Dream Rides, and then her nonprofit is called Hatching for Health. And so we put this van together and have successfully transported, hundreds of patients at this point, and it's been an incredible journey. So we always still find ways to work together, even though we don't work necessarily in the same industry.
That's incredible and a great way to give back. I mean, I do think that's something important about, small middle market businesses, that they are such a cornerstone of the community, and
Yeah.
finding ways to give back to the community that's supporting you as you're growing your business, or scaling is so important. That's what a gift. That's
Yes,
really cool.
it is. It is. I was very grateful to be part of that.
So you have so much going on, starting this business, you've got a lot, like it's a lot. You're starting these new partnerships, you're growing. Like, what are a few of your personal daily rituals that help you to stay strong and be ready to tackle those 23-hour work days with your team?
I will say I drink a lot of caffeine. You can see me sipping on a Red Bull as we've been filming this. And that's probably not great advice to give, but it is the truth. I'm tired a lot because I work long hours. But something that I start every single day at least 30 minutes before anybody else in the house gets up, and that's just me time. And whatever I do during that time, whether it's just take a shower in silence or have a cup of coffee, I just sit, right? I sit and I kind of think about, okay, these are the things that I need to get. What am I worried about today? Because I think a lot of people struggle with, anxiety, and, you can cripple yourself with that. And so if there's anything that I know that, is heavy on my mind for that day, I actually just affirm myself. You got this. You're going to figure this out. You're going to get to work, and you know that you're going to talk through this, whatever this issue is, with the team, right? Fortunately, I have less days like that than I did about a year and a half ago, but it was a daily thing for me. So now when I wake up 30 minutes early in the mornings, I actually just have a little bit of peace before I, head into the chaos of entrepreneurship for the day. So I do try to, at this point in time, turn off also. So that has always been tough for me, but I do, specifically when my kids are with me and they're not at their dad's house, I used to have a lot of guilt, and I think a lot of women might relate to this, and not that dads won't, but I'm sure they do, but I think it is different for a mom. But I used to have a lot of guilt, when I would be sitting with the kids and, I'm on my phone checking emails or, and I don't think that you realize the impact that could have, right, on your relationship with your children. And so I make it a point, especially when my kids are with me, for at least an hour before they go to bed, I'm not on the phone. We're going to sit together. We are going to have family time. We're going to sit down and eat dinner. It may not be a home cooked meal. It might be Chick-fil-A, but that's okay. We're going to sit down. We're going to talk to each other, and we're going to not have a screen in front of us. And I think that is really important, because if you go through this journey, and at the end of it, we all do this, right? Because we want to be very, very successful. But if you get to that, when you get to that success point, if you don't have people in your life, i.e. your family or your friends, to enjoy it with you, what was the point, right?
That is such great advice. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
I do have one last question, but before I ask it, I want to point people to your website at vansharks.com. And if you, audience, enjoy seeing just how they build these incredible vehicles, I highly recommend going to their YouTube channel. Brooklyn's done an excellent job showing just some really exciting videos on how the process takes place. And that's youtube.com/@vansharks, all one word. And it's definitely worth watching. It's absolutely fascinating and really exciting to see how they build these and what the end result is. So, final question: what is a hard lesson that you've learned while starting and growing your business that you would like to share with other CEOs and entrepreneurs?
Oh, not everybody's going to get it.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody is going to get it. When I left a corporate job to take over Van Sharks full time, and I had so many people tell me, you're making a huge mistake. You're making a huge mistake. And, I spent a lot, especially last year, and this year it's been that way some, right? I think, we're still 2 years and 9 months old. We'll be 3 years in December, or January rather, but I spent a lot of late nights and, had to cancel things, right? And people assumed, well, she's flaky. She just doesn't want to spend time with me. I can't be friends with her because, and even family members, right? And they just don't get it, right? They don't get it. They don't get what it takes. They don't get what it means, right? To embody and live this journey and, do it anyways. Right. And do it afraid, because it is scary, right? There's nobody, I think, that is in business for themselves that does not wake up with fear pretty regularly about something, right? So, I think it's okay for people to not get it, but it's also okay to not explain yourself all the time to them. I don't think that as soon as I stopped being concerned with the perception of me, I felt a lot freer. And the truth of it is that the people that, you want to be in your corner are the people that are going to ride through all the trenches of life with you. And so, at the end of, at least at this stage, I'm grateful that I have some real genuine relationships with friends and family around me that do get it. But I have lost some people along the way, and it's okay.
That's awesome. Really good advice. Very good advice. I've been talking with Brookelyn Avila, the owner of Van Sharks. Brookelyn, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for sharing your story, your experience, your advice. I want to keep in touch because I'm very interested in seeing where this goes. So
Well,
thank you.
you. It's been an honor, Heather. I appreciate your time and look forward to connecting soon.
Thank you for listening to the Growth Plus Exit podcast, sponsored by Newport, a unique national business advisory firm. If you enjoyed this show, be sure to share, like, and subscribe for future episodes.